Oh, yes. Yes. So I watched a new documentary with my wife, and this is called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. This is a film that features Dr. Stephen Greer. He put out a show or film 3 years ago called Unacknowledged. He's a former emergency room doctor. He's been in the UFO community for a long time. He's gone and done a lot of work getting documents and doing FOIA requests, and he believes he has an inside track of what this phenomenon is and what the private industry is doing and what this could all mean for humanity. And I this documentary is a little different than some of the others you may have seen, Joe. Like in some other documentaries, like, okay, you got you have these documents, and you have some crashed vehicles, and they could be reverse engineering this. It does dabble in the technology a little bit, but it goes full swing into the spirituality side of this, and it goes a little deeper, which you might find fascinating, and I certainly did. So I will play this first little clip here. It's about a minute long. This is the first clip from Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
The unacknowledged special access projects are run in a way that they are outside the purview and control of the president or the Congress. And for that reason, our elected representatives are unlikely to resolve this problem. But we can resolve it by going directly to these civilizations and saying, we're here. You can make contact with us. We're unarmed. We are friendly.
Since 1990, a network of free thinkers and renegades have been bypassing the national security state to make direct contact with advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. Using the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind protocols, or CE5, developed by Dr. Greer. This has proven to be the most subversive and dangerous information he has released to the public.
So that voiceover, that's Jeremy Piven right there. You know who Jeremy Piven is?
The actor.
Yeah, the actor. That's right. He was in Entourage. He was in PCU. He played in a Seinfeld episode. He played as George when they did that little.
Oh, that's right. He was the guy who was cast as George.
That's correct. Yeah.
That was such a meta episode.
It
too,
was
because
awesome.
it was it was like Larry David doing like what he was doing already.
It's ridiculous if you think about it.
It is, yeah. But man, did you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
I've been watching. Well,
the season.
I've watched most of the season. We canceled HBO before this season concluded, but I kind of got to see how it winds up.
Oh my God, I think it's done now. But the man, that show is like, how is it so good so consistently?
Because he's a genius.
Yeah, he's a genius.
Larry David is a genius.
He sits on his ass and then he's like, I think I'll do another season on HBO. Good for him.
I put a link to Hollywood Reporter talking about this film, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. If you guys want to read the review, they're reviewing it. The Hollywood Reporter's reviewing it, one because it's a movie and it's got like a big Hollywood. I guess he's an A-lister or B-lister doing the voiceover, so that's a big get to lend your name and star power to a film like this. Last year, and for I believe it was the Skinwalker Ranch documentary that we talked about, they had Mickey Rourke do the voiceover. So it might be kind of like a trendy thing to do, is like spend a lot of money, get a big actor or actress to voice your stuff, drum up publicity.
Yep. Yeah, there was who was the guy who did the 15-minute Building 7 thing for 9/11?
Hulk Hogan.
It
wasn't him,
no.
But yeah, it was like a famous guy, and he was on board, and yeah, it got a little bit more of attention.
Yeah,
because they had that voice.
Yeah. So you might be asking yourself, what is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind? You're familiar, probably everyone's familiar with the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, but what does it really mean, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind? This next clip will tell you all about it.
Close Encounters of the First Kind consists of visual sightings of an unidentified flying object. Close Encounters of the Second Kind, some physical trace is present, like impressions in the ground or scorched vegetation. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the occupants or pilots of an ET craft are witnessed. Close Encounters of the Fourth Kind, a human is brought on board an ET craft. Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, proactive, human-initiated communication with extraterrestrial beings.
So
Most of
if
the
you
phenomena
voluntarily go and
presented in this
engage with
film-
aliens,
If you voluntarily, proactively try to engage with aliens, that's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
lame.
Yeah.
were photographed or recorded during a CE5 contact event. For thousands of people, contact has begun. This is their story.
So this is a group of people getting together using various techniques in meditation to try to make contact with these off-world entities or otherworldly entities or just interdimensional entities. And this is where it becomes not only a quest to find life outside of our solar system, but also life in possibly a different dimension or an intelligence in a different dimension. This is where I've often said this. If you look into UFOs enough, it's going to take you into the realm of spirituality. And this is it. The documentary does a fairly good job of establishing that there are some pretty unique things going on with the human mind when it comes to perception and the influencing the outcome of events. Just simply by us humans, us conscious entities, observing the world around us and just participating in it. There are, I don't know if you remember, Joe, but there's maybe last year I talked about some early 1900 encounters with aliens. You had people like in the late 1940s and early 1950s encounter humanoid aliens that were peaceful. I think Adam Minsky was the most prominent one who said, "Hey, I met with these tall, blonde humanoids who, by all accounts, were very nice. They wanted to help us out, and they were all friendly." That was primarily a good chunk of the interactions early on in the modern ufology that's been happening for the past 70 years almost at this point. Well, this next clip kind of goes to that, how the ruling elite, people in the government, you can call them deep state, know about UFOs and alien encounters and what that means for everyone.
Some years ago, I had a meeting with the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein, Hans Adam von Liechtenstein. He had reached out to me through some of his contacts. He said, "Look, Dr. Greer, we have to meet, but we can't talk about this on the phone. Your efforts to effect disclosure are noble, but they will not be able to be permitted, and not for the reasons you think." I said, "Well, this is interesting." Finally, we got together in New York City in July of 1994. He said to me, in 1989, a group of us were trying to do disclosure, and it involved Gorbachev, President Bush Sr., himself, and the UN Secretary General Pérez de Cuellar. And in the course of us putting together the high-level planning meetings to do this, Pérez de Cuellar, the UN Secretary General, was abducted out of his limousine in Manhattan. He was told by the aliens that if they did not cease and desist from their plans to disclose this information, that every world leader involved, including the President of the United States, would be abducted. This blew up like an atomic bomb in the Bush White House, and it did not go forward. I said, "Okay, well, tell me more." He says, "Well, we've concluded that we have to prepare the public for an interplanetary war. And in doing so, we can then also force the return of Christ." And I'm quoting. And I just listened.
I do not like this guy.
He didn't know that I...
You don't like Dr. Greer?
The Greer he is such a moonbat. I don't buy anything he says.
Okay, let me finish this clip and we'll talk about it.
Okay.
That the means for that abduction for Pérez de Cuellar were run by a counterintelligence unit out of the national security state that had the technologies to simulate an alien craft and aliens run completely by military assets, and that there was a deeper part of these unacknowledged special access projects that were zooming even people like Bush Sr., who was on the committee but had lost control of some of these renegade factions. This is a very complicated story. Paris de Cuellar being abducted caused him to stop that process. It manipulated these leaders into going onto a war footing. And he confessed to me that the reason he was funding the work of the abduction groups was because they wanted to put information out to the public that would scare the public so that people would make the sacrifice in blood and treasure to have an interplanetary war. Now, this is 25 years ago. Was not a happy meeting for me.
So that's Greer talking about the MyLabs military abduction program to cause fear within the public and to create a justification for an interplanetary war. Now, Joe, you said you don't like Dr. Greer. You don't believe him.
This is the guy who's like ripped, right?
He's a big dude. Yeah, he's a big dude.
This is the most full of shit guy I've ever encountered in any of the UFO stuff I've come across.
Now, why do you think he's full of shit?
He is. He's full of shit. The guy seems like if there's anybody who's a mirage man, this is the guy. Like, he just seems so full of shit. And who's talking to him about Bush and all these things that are going on secretly? Bullshit. You really buy this?
I don't know if I buy everything that he says, but this is all about perspective. Like, I don't know how much inside information he has. He has put together disclosure conferences where he has assembled people, like in 2001, where he assembled a lot of ex-military people to present a panel. Now, I do believe their eyewitness testimony. If you remove Dr. Greer and just take a look at the eyewitness testimony from former Air Force pilots, just commercial airline pilots who stepped forward in 2001, very compelling. A lot of eyewitness testimony there. Then he did it again, I believe, 15 years later with a different disclosure conference. I believe Dr. Greer believes what he's saying. I don't think he's purposely trying to mislead people. I think that when he puts together this Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind group, when he gets together 10 people to do a meditation to contact entities, he believes that it is working and that they are contacting something. I don't believe him to be a pathological liar.
Maybe.
It's not to say he hasn't been misled by some government documents. It's not to say he hasn't been leaked stuff to purposely make something sound totally BS. And I agree. A lot of this seems fantastical. But I indulge in this stuff. You can call BS. I think that the military and elements within the private sector would put together a group of people to cause fear in the public because it's beneficial to their bottom line, so they can make new technologies, so we can have endless war. So, I mean, if they had a choice to have peaceful relations with an advanced race or go to war with them, hopefully, you or I would want to have peaceful relations, not these psychopaths who are in power. I don't think so.
Mm-mm.
I don't think so. So when it comes to the military abduction technology, like they can fake what a UFO looks like. That's like Project Bluebeam stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's what Werner von Braun talked about.
Right. Yeah, and that I put a little bit more stock into because it seems to have played out in that way. They may have done an audible where the virus is now the aliens, because they just weren't ready for the aliens.
I totally agree. They may have called an audible because, one, the person who was supposed to be in power, Hillary, wasn't there. And you can see all the documents they had ready to roll out. You had the whole USS Nimitz and the New York Times article that came out in 2017. Hillary was supposed to be president when they rolled out all this stuff. It didn't happen, but they still had the Two Stars Academy all lined up with Tom DeLonge. You talk about a Mirage Man, Joe. It's probably Mr. DeLonge. Greer, while he might seem like a lot of what he talked about might seem wacky, I don't think it is. It's not wacky at all. It's grounded in some pretty interesting science that's just now being talked about.
I mean, I can see that. I mean, Bill was famously into the alien thing. I mean, I don't think I heard as much out of Trump about wanting to open it up and all that stuff and play that game. So yeah, I could kind of understand where Bill and Hillary were like, this alien thing, we're on board with the whole schedule. We did the war on terror right after the communism thing, and all those plans from Werner von Braun kind of played out the way they were supposed to. But then, I think there was there are connections with China, with politicians and the media here in this country that they favor the left. There's really no way to say they don't. I mean, they favor the Democrats. That's why Trump is Hitler. That's why good people on both sides, the whole bullshit, the Covington kids, all this other stuff. That's why they run with this stuff, and the whole world believes it. Because the entire narrative is driven by these Chinese socialist communist assholes. And yeah, maybe they did. They just did an audible, and we're like, we got this bat shit over here. Maybe we can do something with this and get Trump out of there. And I thought that maybe they thought that they could do that.
That's a distinct possibility. It is some kind of medical using. I'm doing air quotes, using science and shame to get the things done when they, the original plan could have been a Project Bluebeam UFO scare for all we know. Now, when it comes to Dr. Stephen Greer and proactively trying to communicate with interdimensional entities using your mind, this next clip talking about human consciousness will speak to that. And I appreciate Joe's concern with being guarded in his belief. That's who he is. I go in with both feet. I dive in. Okay.
I just have always had a bad feeling about Greer.
It's
but
fine.
Whatever.
That's okay. I think a lot of people in the UFO community share your sentiment. So we'll touch it one topic at a time. Here we go.
Consciousness, this faculty of being sentient, awake, is not limited to our brainwaves or our bodies, but in fact transcends the limits of space-time. It's an unbounded field of awareness. And that is true whether you recognize it or not. Interestingly, it doesn't matter if you intellectualize it. That is the reality of it that has been proven through scientific studies, such as Dr. John's work at Princeton, where they would have people put their awareness on a random number generator that's spitting out zeros and ones randomly, and would intend to shift it, say, towards zeros, and it would shift without any linear wires, just their thought.
Essentially what a random number generator does is it looks at something intrinsically random in the physical world, typically a quantum process, and it converts those into a string of ones and zeros. So you can think of it kind of like a coin flipper where heads is 1 and tails is 0. Now if you collect a large enough sample size, you find a 50-50 distribution of these ones and zeros, meaning physical reality is behaving the way it should. Well, if you get somebody in front of the machine and you ask them to use their intention to mean shift the thing to more ones or more zeros, what you find is that there's, not all the time, but often a significant mean shift in the direction of their intention. Now that's a very simple experiment, but the implications are absolutely profound. That suggests that, in fact, consciousness does not seem to be just an illusion or just a localized phenomenon, but that it does have some sort of capabilities to affect the probabilities at the deepest layer of reality, down in the basement layer of the quantum world somehow.
So to distill that down, by you sitting in front of a bunch of different coin flips, by you observing and wishing for it to come up heads more oftentimes than not, that intention coupled with a feeling can influence the outcome. Statistically, it's been proven. This book, Real Magic by Dean Radin, is full of cited tests and studies documenting people's thoughts influencing the physical reality, ranging from creating an effigy of somebody to cause pain or sickness, to the outcome of a random number generator being influenced by your mind, or blessing water, like a monk, a couple of monks blessing water to instill healing properties in that water. Documented all right there in that book. And that's what Greer is getting at, is that the mind is much more powerful than we give it credit for. And that he goes in to say that the speed of thought is faster than light. Like I guess I don't know if it's been calculated how fast like a thought is. You probably could say it's like at the speed of light because a synapse is a little piece of electricity. He is saying that our mind, our thoughts are faster than light, and hence kind of like quantum computers. And it goes into consciousness. Like a good chunk of the film, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, deals with, we don't really know what consciousness is. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know like at what level does a living creature start to just become self-aware and go, hey, I'm here and I'm conscious. I want to start imagining and using my mind in different weird ways.
Yeah. Scott Adams was talking about that, like a clam doesn't need to go, well, I'm a clam, so I need to do clam things. It just does things. It's just a clam.
Yeah.
But like there is some point where sentient, and there's levels. I mean, because you think about like a dog. They say a dog is, roughly around a 3-year-old child's level of IQ capacity. But even them, they're only trained on habit. They're only trained on conditioning. It's not like a person who can reason and rationalize at a certain age. I mean, obviously, when you're a kid, you shit your pants and you just cry when you're hungry. It's just the way it is. But at some point, you're like, I'm hungry. I'm going to have to figure this out. So, yeah, I do think that's interesting. And I do think that there's a lot of power with the mind, which is why I think they did those experiments with the men who stare at goats and being able to sort of visualize places far away. What do they call that?
Remote viewing. And
remote viewing, yeah.
They featured a lot of the people in the Princeton studies in this film. And this is where, like, at this point in the film is where you start to hear stories and testimonials from people that are using the protocols to conjure entities. And what happens is that Dr. Greer will go out into the wilderness, or
is he really a doctor?
He was a doctor. I don't think he's currently a practicing.
Yeah, like what? A doctor of what?
Yeah, he was an emergency
like Dr.
doctor.
Feelgood?
That wasn't Dr. Feelgood. It wasn't a Motley Crue thing. It wasn't Dr. Vince Neil. He was I think an ER doctor. Like, so if you went to an ER, he would be one of the doctors you would see.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, that's legit.
So he's not like an astronomy doctor.
No, he's not like
he's
Dr. Indiana Jones. He's not like that. He's a legit, medical doctor. At least he was. He gave it all up to pursue UFOs.
Right. Okay.
So he would take people out and start meditating using these series of steps where you have to visualize that there are aliens out there, where their location is, and then you mentally send them a message of, here I am, I'm at this exact location, visualize your location going through the clouds on planet Earth, and you do that a series of times, and that will conjure and you're basically asking the aliens to come in. And they have video footage from all these sessions where there appears to be like light in the sky, like balls of light in the sky do appear. There's several videos where there appears to be a portal that opens up and this weird stuff drops out. Then there's other pictures of like these weird, almost translucent entities that kind of congregate around the people as they do this meditation. You can say tricks of light, tricks of the camera, just lens flare. J.J. Abrams is directing this. There's a lot of lens flare everywhere, all these crazy entities. I'm believing that they're capturing some real entities here. And this is where it gets dicey, whether or not it is like the little green men or gray aliens that we would see in 3D or 3D, or we're talking about entities that are in a different dimension and that are something more akin to like an angel, like these higher up kind of things. And I know this gets a little crazy for you, Joe, and this probably makes some people uncomfortable to talk about Martians in the same breath as angels or spirit guides and stuff like that. But this is exactly where it's going, is that your mind can interact with these entities if you wanted to. And that's what the military doesn't want you to know. Because if you can directly contact and interact with these different forms of consciousness, well, then you don't need to go through the government to get authorization, and you sure as hell don't need to start funding a war machine to go with war with Bleep Bloop who lives on Mars.
So this is the fifth kind. Is that it's sort of like it's an interdimensional or a
interdimensional contact.
It's somewhat of a like a intellectual or a psionic.
Yes, and
deal.
ESP, and this last clip I have from this movie speaks to that.
How could ESP work? Does ESP violate any physics? First of all, you can't violate the laws of physics, not like going through a stop sign. If you have a phenomenon, physics has to change to agree with your phenomena.
The biggest interest in classified intelligence projects has to do with the science of consciousness. Because even during the Cold War and before, in World War II, they realized that there were people on the other side of some of those conflicts that were very adept at what's now called remote viewing, the ability to use consciousness to spy on a remote place. These programs began to be studied scientifically and then routinized, made routine in the intelligence community back in the 40s, 50s, 60s.
You could say my spiritual development was paid for by the CIA. It's a very unusual situation.
That was Russell Targ talking there, the father, one of the fathers of the remote viewing program that the I guess the Pentagon helped fund along with the CIA. Fascinating stuff there. I am a believer in these mind powers, ESP. And probably a lot of people out there have had like this kind of sixth sense at time where you can feel somebody's watching you, or you can feel something's off using your intuition. Those are phenomena that have been well documented, and they do exist. As for mind-to-mind communication, like being able to read someone's mind, that's a whole different area. And this documentary doesn't really touch on that. This only goes into being able to communicate and conjure and bring these entities into your world through positivity and intention. You can do it. It's something I would like to do. Maybe we can get some listeners together. I know my wife is into meditation. She's probably much more brave around these subjects than I am. But it might be something interesting to try. But as with as I was watching this, I always try to tie in big picture stuff. Like if you like, this is interesting. Like I've heard stuff like this before, and I put some links in the description. I'm not sure if you ever heard of this, Joe, but the Global Consciousness Project, like right before and during 9/11, there was an interesting phenomenon that took place all over the globe. There was random number generators all over the globe, just spitting out ones and zeros.
Oh, yeah.
And right before and during, those sequences of ones and zeros started to become less and less random. And I think there was a fluctuation of like 10 to 15%, which is statistically impressive. Meaning that when there is a world event and everyone's consciousness is mostly focused on one thing, and even a little bit before, that there's less randomness in our universe, in our reality. And it also happened, they also studied the same phenomenon during Princess Di, during her death, where the world was focused on one thing. Very powerful. It's very powerful when you have the world focused on an event and you focus all that psychic energy, you can get stuff done. Look at what's going on right now, Joe. Everyone's focused on this thing. And if we go on YouTube, we can't even talk about the thing that's going on.
I know.
How bizarre is that? So if they want people's attention, they certainly have it when you threaten their well-being. Be it through a virus or possibly a laser beam from the sky. It'll get your attention. So it's powerful. It is very powerful. And us doing it together with positive intention is equally as powerful. But what I remembered, this little thing. So remember, meditation. Meditation can interact with these interdimensional entities. They can interact with these different aliens who live and travel across the universe and through different galaxies interdimensionally. They're not going past the speed of light. They're just kind of zipping through dimensions. That's why some of them look translucent at times. This is all according to Dr. Greer. Like they zone, they phase in and out of our dimension because that's how they travel. So listen to this next clip here. This next clip, and keep in mind the thing with meditation and being able to contact things. Here we go.
This guy shows up one day while the ranching family is still there. He's built like Grizzly Adams, big burly guy with a beard. He said he'd been drawn to the property, and he talks to the rancher and says, I just need to meditate for a couple of minutes. I'm drawn here. I need to do this. Can you let me on the property? The rancher kind of bemusedly says, okay, come on in. He lets the guy in. The rancher and his son escort him to the middle homestead, and the rancher and his son are watching the guy and just kind of chuckling to themselves. They hear this thing in the brush, and then they look over and there's something moving. And then it comes out of the brush right up to where this guy is. And it looked like the creature in Predator with the camouflage, the opaque camouflage, the invisibility technology. This thing comes right up to this guy and roars. Scares the hell out of this guy, who opens his eyes, flies back, lands on his back. The rancher and his son go rushing over to him. He's petrified, grabbing him, won't let go. They escort him off the property, and he swears, it's the devil, it's Satan. You're gonna burn for this kind of stuff.
Is it possible that the terrifying creature witnessed by both the ranchers and their mysterious visitor was what the Navajo call a skinwalker? Was it a being from another world? Even another dimension?
So that's a story from Skinwalker Ranch, where a person was drawn to the ranch to do some meditation, and then out of nowhere, that predator-like creature came out of the woods and scared the hell out of the rancher and the person who was doing the meditating.
Well, who's to say that a skinwalker isn't from another world or another dimension or another planet?
Exactly, Joe. Exactly.
And here's something that's kind of interesting. It's relevant because it happened within the last week or two. But I saw they had developed a police riot shield that would cloak you. Basically, what? Yeah, I saw the video. It's like the guy stood behind the shield, and you could kind of make out like a little bit of fuzziness. But it was like literally, if you were walking by and not really paying attention, you would be invisible. So the idea that this technology isn't available, it's like they already are putting it into the hands of the police, which is exactly where they put most of the technology, is in the hands of government and police and the military. Generally where it goes, GPS, all that stuff. But yeah, I was watching this video because I saw it was like a tweet or something like that. And I'm like, bullshit, because it's me. I'm a skeptic. I don't buy it. And then I'm looking at this video and I'm like, motherfucker, that's pretty intense. So I don't know. I mean, like if these skinwalkers or aliens or whatever are coming from another world, boy, wouldn't it be convenient if you could just kind of go invisible?
Yeah. And not have to worry about all the malarkey going around here. So what I was getting at with playing that clip where that person went out and was meditating on the ranch, I believe when you get into a really focused meditative trance, you yourself and your mind starts to act like a receiver, and other entities that can hone in to that frequency can pinpoint you. And it's like, oh, there's a person over there. It's like a radio frequency. You're dialing it in, and you're dialing into their frequency when you start meditating. That creature out there at Skinwalker Ranch did not like that person who was meditating. It was interrupting their frequency and potentially could have exposed whatever thing they were doing. What Dr. Greer was doing with the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind stuff, he was drawing in, trying to bring in positive entities. But as with everything, if there's some positive stuff going on, there is negative stuff going on. And at Skinwalker Ranch, it appears to be fairly negative. Cattle mutilations, that predator was screamed in the face of the guy just meditating, a poltergeist, fear, weird stuff. And on the newest show, the newest episode, which I won't dive into here, we're going to move on here, but they discovered that 1 mile above the ground on Skinwalker Ranch, there is extreme amount of radiation being produced, and they're measuring it, and they're trying to send weather balloons up there to fly through this radiation that is being generated. And it's so powerful. It's like if you were standing next to a microwave with the door open while it's running. They're able to measure it, and they're triangulating it, and they're trying to figure out how is radiation being generated 1 mile up in the air. So it's fascinating stuff going on at the newest episode on Skinwalker Ranch. Fascinating stuff.
I just like this idea of cattle mutilation. Like, I mean, I don't know what kind of sadistic thing. Like, you have the technology to get from one dimension to the other, or from one planet to the other, and you just want to mutilate a cow.
Yeah. Well,
what's wrong with you?
It's weird if we're living in some sort of parallel universe. They're coming over here taking our cows. I mean, just think about the possibilities with the mind meditation interface. I mean, that's supposedly, when it comes to like conjuring entities, that's supposedly what the Nazis did in the Vril Society to get all the technology that they use for all their weird Nazi stuff. It came through channeling and the occult, conjuring up like darker entities to help out the goddamn Nazis.
Well, and seances and Ouija boards and all these things are not based on nothing. It's people believe this stuff. There's that, light as a feather, stiff as a board, all these things that people tend to gravitate towards. It's whether it's just our brains and the way that we're conditioned, and we gravitate towards them and want to believe them, or maybe there is some truth at the root. I don't know.
I think there's some truth there. I'll continue.
Cretchen found a really nice article that I think is relevant.
Okay.
The 9/11 foreknowledge caught on computers that measure global mind.
Yeah.
Because you kind of brought it up in passing.
Yeah. I read through this, so I read pros and cons on this global consciousness thing. And I read one professor said he didn't believe it, but he didn't say why he didn't believe it. He just didn't. It sounded like he didn't want to believe it. So I'll read a little.
Be like me. Like there's a part of me that's like, nah, prove it. I'm not gonna believe it.
Yeah, it's like talking to Kirby. Hopefully Kirby. With the exposure of like the ATIP program and all this stuff, like there's enough research out there. There's enough documents out there where you can kind of put it together for yourself. But a lot of people want it handed to them on a plate. And I get that. I want that myself too.
Right. You want to see the photographic evidence. You want to see it documented. And the other thing about that is that you want it to come from a specific news source. Like you either want it to come from Fox or MSNBC or whatever. And otherwise they're not going to believe it, period. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is just so fucked up, especially when you can go on Wikipedia and look at, I don't know, what was the project, they were going to blow up Cuba and all that shit.
Oh, Northwoods.
Operation Northwoods. Yeah. It's like, you think these people, like, you think that was the only time they had these kinds of ideas and we're tossing them around and we're making tons of money off taxpayer dollars? You think it's the only time they did that?
No.
No.
Not at all. No. I'll read a little bit of this article that Cretch posted. This is about the 9/11 foreknowledge. Fascinating research into a global mind picked up startling data in the days and hours before the 9/11 attacks, indicating widespread foreknowledge. The Global Consciousness Project uses electromagnetically shielded computers located throughout the world that generate random numbers. In its 13-year history, these computers show statistically significant deviations during global events that affect humans. What GCP found on 9/11 shows foreknowledge for nearly 16 hours before the first plane struck. This data lends support to the proposition that several hundred people around the world had time-specific information about the attacks. Interesting. So it wasn't predictive. It was just that a lot of people had knowledge of something. Interesting. Roger Nelson has spent the past 30 years looking for evidence of a global mind, says Morgan Freeman, host of the science TV series Through the Wormhole. Whether called the, noosphere, some morphic field, or information field, the global mind is real, believes Nelson, along with many other scientists. Though much weaker than the obvious 5 experiments indicate that the sixth sense is part of a global communication network that can be indirectly measured. While the U.S. military has long been involved in psi research, GCP tries to objectively measure interconnected consciousness through scientific means and freely releases that information to the public. This link, it just kind of goes through what they found, the deviations, the graph, the math behind it, and the spikes in the global consciousness. So I'll put this in the description too. I mean, Gretchen, you found it. Did you get a chance to read through it all? What do you think?
I read the entire article while posting crappy GIFs. Now, it looked interesting. At a glance, the idea that if there are things that are generating random numbers just to create entropy, that they all of a sudden several of them all start ticking over when something major is going on. So
yeah, it's fascinating.
I don't know how much we can really give credence to it, but it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I dig it. And I definitely urge people to check out the book by Dean Radin, Real Magic. Fascinating stuff with similar type of studies. All right. Well, I think I'm done talking about this.
If you want to join the Slack or Discord, give us an email at ourbigdumbmouth@gmail.com. Check out obdmpod.com for all the social media and donation links. Be a part of the magic.